There are places in this world that feel alive, so alive, in fact, that they quietly hold the darkest secrets. And tonight, we start with one of them, a 42-acre private estate, a billionaire with no enemies, or so everyone thought, a secret worth far more than the empire he built, and a death so calculated. Investigators wondered whether the killer had been living closer than anyone imagined. This is the story of how a man buried in luxury became buried by the very secret he protected. It was 5:43 a.m. on a cold Thursday morning when the first emergency call came through. By the time paramedics and investigators arrived, fog still hung over the grounds of Halbrook Estate, a property so massive and so famously private that even the local police used to joke, "Nothing bad ever happens on that hill." But this morning, every officer at the scene felt it. Something was wrong. Alexander Halbrook. Alexander wasn't born into wealth. He built his empire from nothing. Born in a cramped two-bedroom apartment above a hardware store, he grew up watching his father work long hours and his mother stretch every dollar. He promised himself he would create a life where none of that struggle would follow him. And he did. By age 30, he had launched a real estate company that grew faster than anyone predicted. By 40, he owned more than 18 skyscrapers. By 45, he was considered one of the most strategic and secretive developers in the entire country. Yet for all his wealth, Alexander lived a strangely private life. No scandals, no wild parties, just the estate, his work, his family, and that ring, the one symbol of the lineage he planned to pass down. But the truth was this: the ring didn't just symbolize family, it concealed one. The mansion itself, 60,000 square feet of steel, glass, and white limestone, looked like a silent giant against the pale blue dawn. The manicured gardens were still coated in dew, and thick, low fog rolled off the private lake in slow, ghost-like waves. But inside, in the grand marble foyer, lay the lifeless body of the estate's owner, Alexander Halbrook, billionaire, philanthropist, real estate mogul, father of 3, a man with influence so wide-reaching that half the city's skyline carried his name. Frankly, no one could believe what they were seeing. Detective Rowan Pierce arrived just as the first body photos were being taken. A man in his early 50s with sharp gray eyes, Pierce had seen more scenes like this than he cared to remember, but even he paused. Halbrook's body was positioned awkwardly, as if he had fallen backward. His hand was extended toward the base of the grand staircase, almost like he had been reaching for something. Or someone. There was no forced entry, no sign of struggle, no weapon, nothing except the ring, or rather, the absence of it. Halbrook was known for wearing a singular piece of jewelry, a heavy gold family signet ring passed down through 5 generations. He wore it everywhere, boardrooms, charity galas, even at home. But here, on the marble floor, his hand was bare. Detective Pierce crouched beside the body. "Where's the ring?" No one knew. But everyone would soon learn that its disappearance was the single clue that tied the entire case together. To understand how a man like Alexander Halbrook ended up dead in his own home, we need to go back, not just hours before his death, but years. Because this story didn't start the night he died. It began long before, with a decision he made that he never told a soul. A decision that would eventually get him killed. Alexander Halbrook. Alexander wasn't born into wealth. He built his empire from nothing. Born in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a hardware store, he grew up watching his father work long hours and his mother stretch every dollar. He promised himself he would create a life where none of that struggle would follow him. And he did. By age 30, he had launched a real estate company that grew faster than anyone predicted. By 40, he owned more than 18 skyscrapers. By 45, he was considered one of the most strategic and secretive developers in the entire country. Yet for all his wealth, Alexander lived a strangely private life. No scandals, no wild parties, just the estate, his work, his family, and that ring, the one symbol of the lineage he planned to pass down. But the truth was this. The ring didn't just symbolize family, it concealed one. Few people knew that the ring itself was rumored to be worth millions, not because of gems or gold, but because of what was hidden inside it. A compartment, a secret engraving, a numerical sequence that, according to whispers in certain circles, unlocked a fortune far larger than Holbrook's public empire. Most dismissed it as rumor. But rumors have a strange quality. Some are harmless, some are forgotten, and others, if true, are worth killing for. According to the estate's night staff, Alexander was restless the night before he died. He canceled a dinner meeting. He skipped his weekly video call with his accountant. He even turned down an evening drink with his daughter, which he never did. Instead, he spent most of the evening locked in his private study. At 10:47 p.m., the housekeeper brought him tea. She noticed something unusual. He had the old family documents out again. Thick binders, yellowed paper, a dusty wooden box supposedly containing the original deed to Holbrook Estate. But when she quietly placed the tray on his table, she also noticed his ring was off, resting on the desk. He never removed it, not even in sleep. At 11:06 p.m., she saw him speaking on the phone, agitated, pacing. At 11:39 p.m., the security cameras caught him moving toward the hidden corridor behind the library. Only old members of the Holbrook family knew it even existed. He was carrying the ring. That was the last footage of him alive. At 6:12 a.m., his wife, Madeline, woke to frantic knocks. A staff member had found the body. Madeline appeared at the scene trembling, wrapped in a white silk robe, insisting he had no enemies. None. But her son, Thomas, did not react the same way. A tall, composed 27-year-old with sharp cheekbones and an even sharper temper, Thomas walked into the room, paused, and looked too calm, almost detached. His first question wasn't what happened. It was, "Where's his ring?" Detective Pierce noticed. So did everyone else. The Holbrook family consisted of Madeline, the wife Regal, intelligent, impeccably composed. The kind of woman who had been groomed her entire life to fit the image of wealth. Thomas, the eldest son, ambitious, impatient, and frequently clashing with Alexander about the future of the company. Lydia, the daughter, quiet, artistic, and deeply attached to her father. James, the youngest, only 14. Barely understanding the weight of the tragedy. But beneath the polished surface, there were fractures, old fractures, hidden fractures, and the night of Alexander's death. Those fractures ripped open. Later that morning, while investigators controlled the scene, a lawyer arrived at the estate with a sealed envelope. Inside was an updated version of Alex's will, dated only 2 weeks before his death. The lawyer handed it to Detective Pierce. Mr. Holbrook insisted I deliver this immediately if anything ever happened to him. The contents stunned everyone. Instead of dividing his empire equally, he had left everything to only one person. Not his wife, not his eldest son, not even his youngest child, but to someone named only as H.A. No first name, no identifying detail, just 2 initials. And the most shocking part? The key to unlocking the inheritance, every property, every trust, every offshore account, was tied directly to the numerical code engraved inside Alexander's ring. The ring that was missing. Detective Pierce stared at the will, then at the family, then at the body. A billionaire dead. A priceless ring gone. A secret heir whose identity no one knew. And a hidden code that controlled an empire. Suddenly, the theory of a simple fall seemed impossible. This was no accident. It was a hunt, a planned extraction. Someone wanted the ring. Someone who knew what it unlocked. Someone who knew Alexander would never willingly give it up. Someone who knew the estate inside and out. Someone who had access. Someone who had motive. And as detectives sealed off the property, Pierce whispered the first words that set the tone of the entire investigation. This wasn't murder for money. This was murder for a legacy. To understand why Richard Adler became the center of a deadly conspiracy, you must understand the empire he built and the enemies he collected while doing it. This is not just the story of a murder. It's the story of a man whose unimaginable wealth made him powerful, and power made him vulnerable. Richard Adler wasn't born into money. In fact, the early chapters of his life looked nothing like the luxury he would one day drown in. He grew up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment above a rusted auto shop, raised by a mother who worked 2 jobs and a father who simply disappeared one night and never came home. People like Richard aren't born with the world in their hands. They learn to claw their way up, often by breaking their nails on the way. Richard spent his teenage years working at a local construction site, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. He mixed cement, carried lumber, repaired tools, always listening, always watching. He wasn't strong, but he was observant. Patterns, timing, people. And he noticed something early. The people who made the buildings worked the hardest. The people who owned them worked the least. That stuck with him, burned into his brain. And by age 22, he was on his way to becoming one of those owners. Richard talked his way into a collapsing real estate firm, one that was so close to bankruptcy that the previous owner practically begged him to take it. He bought it for $78,000, money he didn't have, a loan he shouldn't have qualified for, a risk nobody sane would take. But Richard wasn't like most people. By 29, he owned 14 apartment buildings, 3 commercial complexes, and had started pouring his money into something more dangerous: luxury estates, massive, lavish architectural wonders meant to attract royalty, celebrities, and the wealthy elite. That's where his fortune truly exploded. That's when he became a billionaire. And that's also when his problems began. Out of all his creations, none were as breathtaking or as cursed as the Miraval Crown Estate. A 213-acre private kingdom tucked behind steel gates, hydrangeas, and surveillance towers. A mansion so large it needed its own zip code. 7 fountains, a glass-ceiling ballroom, a subterranean wine vault, and a master wing the size of a standard hotel. People joked that it was less of a home and more of a statement. This is what unlimited money looks like. But the estate held more than wealth. It held secrets. It held whispers. It held envy. And someone wanted it badly enough to kill. Richard had 3 children. Daniel, the oldest, charming on the surface, rotten underneath, always smiling, always lying, always calculating. Eliza, the middle child, quiet, elegant, intelligent, but twisted by a lifetime of feeling invisible. Nathan, the youngest, troubled, reckless, and deeply resentful. To outsiders, they looked like royalty. To insiders, they looked like suspects waiting for their moment. Money doesn't buy love, but it does multiply the consequences of not having it. Daniel believed he deserved the estate. Eliza believed she could run it better. Nathan believed the estate represented the life his father never gave him. And none of them knew one terrifying truth. Only one child was written into the inheritance plan, and Richard hadn't told anyone which one. The Miraval Crown Estate was supposed to be a symbol of success, but the staff knew better. Security guards whispered about doors opening on their own. Gardeners reported visitors who weren't supposed to be there. Maintenance logs showed disabled cameras, power outages, and mysterious scratches on the service entrance. The household manager said it best. Someone was planning something. You could feel it in the walls. Richard ignored it all. He thought he was untouchable. 2 months before his death, Richard's longtime lawyer, Peter Lang, said something during a meeting that changed everything. "Richard, You need to tell your children about the estate plan. Someone could react badly if they feel blindsided. Richard shrugged it off. Let them react. It's my money, my estate. Besides, they'll find out in due time. Those words, "they'll find out in due time," would echo later in the investigation, because someone found out before the will was finalized, and that was the beginning of the end. One night, a security guard reported something strange. A man, tall, hooded, moving quickly, walking through the garden paths toward the back entrance of the mansion. The cameras caught him for 3 seconds, enough to confirm he was real, not enough to identify him. Richard dismissed it as kids messing around. It wasn't kids, it was reconnaissance. It was someone testing the estate's blind spots. It was someone preparing for a crime worth $1.2 billion. Richard rarely invited his children to dinner, but one evening, he did. A gathering in the main dining hall, a room of chandeliers, polished marble, and a table long enough to seat diplomats. Daniel arrived with a smirk. Eliza arrived in silence. Nathan arrived late and drunk. The tension was suffocating. At one point, Daniel raised his glass and said, "To the estate. May it end up in the right hands." Richard looked at him sharply. Daniel smiled. Eliza's fork stopped mid-air. Nathan scoffed. If the walls could talk, they'd scream, "Someone here already knew. Someone here was already planning." This dinner, this silent battlefield, would later become a key moment investigators replayed over and over again. Late one night, while reviewing estate documents in his study, Richard noticed something odd. A stack of files had been moved, passwords had been attempted and failed, and a duplicate keycard was missing. He stared at the desk, breathing slowly. Someone had been in his private office, someone close. He didn't report it. He didn't ask questions. He simply locked the door and poured himself a drink. But the truth? By then it was too late. No story truly knows when its tragedy begins. But if you ask the investigators, if you ask the coroner, if you ask the security team, they'll all say the same thing. Richard's final normal day was the day he signed the last revision of his estate transfer letter. A letter that officially removed one of his children from inheriting the estate. A letter that placed another child in full control. A letter that would never be delivered, because fewer than 48 hours later, Richard Adler would be dead. In every true crime story, there is a moment when danger stops whispering and starts breathing down the victim's neck. For Richard Adler, that moment was now. His estate, beautiful, massive, and seemingly impenetrable, was no longer a symbol of wealth. It had become a hunting ground, and Richard was the prey. The Miraval Crown Estate normally ran like a machine. Every staff member had a schedule. Every security guard followed a pattern. Every camera covered a specific angle. But then, it didn't. It started small. A maid noticed her keys weren't where she left them. A security guard found a door that should have been locked, open. In the following days, the estate felt different. Even the staff felt it. They described it as a coldness, a heaviness, a sense that the walls were listening. Lights flickered, doors creaked open. Rooms felt disturbed. One maid swore she heard footsteps in the master hallway at night. Another saw shadows in the indoor pool room when the lights were off. Paranoia began to spread. But paranoia wasn't the problem. It was the truth underneath it. Because someone was moving through the estate at night. Quietly, strategically, searching. One night, a maid found the bottom drawer of Richard's desk open. Inside it, the estate transfer documents. Someone had been reading them. Someone knew which child would be disinherited, and someone was now desperate. A groundskeeper saw footprints leading to the outer greenhouse, prints too large to belong to anyone on staff. Richard brushed it off, but the staff didn't. And they began quietly whispering among themselves, Someone has been here. Someone who shouldn't be. 2 days after the mysterious footprints were found, the security team performed their weekly backup of the CCTV system. When they did, something chilling emerged. An entire hour of footage was missing. Not corrupted, not glitched, not overwritten, deleted. Cleanly, purposefully, professionally. The head of security, Marcus Hale, reviewed the logs. His face went pale. Someone used an administrator-level code. Someone with access that only 5 people in the world had. One of those 5 was Richard. The other 4, his children. At sunset, one of the estate's drone cameras captured something unsettling. A figure, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket, standing among the oak trees behind the guest pavilion. Motionless, facing the house, watching. The drone hovered for 7 seconds. The figure did not move. When the drone descended for a clearer angle, he vanished. No rustling, no sound, no trace. Marcus Hale reviewed the footage with Richard. Richard's expression tightened. "How long has this been happening?" Marcus hesitated. "Sir, I think this is the 3rd time." Richard put down the tablet. Slowly, very slowly. "Why wasn't I told?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Because we thought it was a contractor, or a groundskeeper, or one of your son's friends." Richard cut him off. "It wasn't." Marcus nodded. They both knew. It was a scout. Someone mapping out the estate. Someone testing reactions. Someone preparing for a moment when no one would be watching 3 days later. Richard hosted what investigators would later describe as the most uncomfortable family dinner in the history of wealthy people pretending to like each other. Daniel arrived first. Buttoned up, polished, charismatic. A salesman of emotions he did not feel. He kissed his father on the cheek and said, "All these years, Dad? You still haven't told us who gets the estate? Are we ever going to know?" Richard didn't answer. Eliza entered next. Her expression unreadable, her posture perfect. She hugged Richard gently and said, "Whatever decision you've made, I just hope it won't tear us apart." But her eyes told a different story, a story of fear and resentment. Then Nathan stumbled in, late and reeking of liquor. He didn't greet his father. He didn't greet his siblings. He just sat down and muttered, "Just give it to whoever you love most, Dad. You always had a favorite." Those words hung in the air like smoke. Richard's face tightened, not with anger, but with guilt. The dinner lasted 42 minutes. Only 42 minutes. It ended with each child walking out one by one, leaving Richard alone with a full plate, a full glass, and a growing sense of dread. Because for the first time, he feared one of his children might actually hurt him. After the disastrous dinner, Richard retreated to his office and made a phone call. A call investigators later recovered from phone logs. A call placed at 11:19 p.m. "Richard, I think one of them knows, Peter. I think someone read the new will." Lawyer, "How? It's not filed, it's not emailed, it's not printed." Richard, "The only copy is on your hard drive." A long silence. Richard, "Exactly." Lawyer, "You think they got into your office?" Richard exhaled shakily. "I think someone has been in this house for weeks." The first attempt on Richard's life wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't involve guns or poison. It was subtle, clever. The kind of attempt made by someone patient and someone smart. It happened at 2:13 a.m. Richard couldn't sleep. He walked downstairs to get water. As he reached the bottom step, the heel of his foot caught something. He stumbled, slipped, fell forward. His head slammed against the marble tile. He laid there, stunned. Then he saw it. The rug at the bottom of the stairs, normally pressed flat, perfectly aligned, had been folded upward, creating a trip point. Richard stared at it. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone who knew he walked this path every night. Someone who knew his habits. Someone inside the house. Richard sat up, his heart pounding. He realized the unthinkable. The killer wasn't coming. The killer was already here. The next day, Marcus Hale, the head of security, called his team for an emergency meeting. He closed the doors, lowered his voice, and said, "We are dealing with an internal threat. This is not an outsider. Someone with access, someone with trust, is trying to kill Richard Adler." The guards looked at each other nervously. Marcus continued, "Check every lock, every passcode, every entry point, every camera, every device." Then he paused. "And do not, under any circumstances, tell the Adler family." Later during the investigation, this moment would be criticized. But Marcus insisted he did it to protect Richard, because he had a terrifying theory. The killer wasn't just someone inside the house, it might be someone inside the bloodline. A week before the murder, Richard attended a private meeting with his lawyer, Peter Lang. Peter noticed something instantly. Richard looked tired. Not physically tired. Psychologically drained. Lawyer: "You need to leave the estate for a few days, Richard. Take a break. Go to your penthouse in the city." Richard shook his head. "No. I need to finish the final signing." Peter hesitated. "Is something wrong?" Richard stared at him with hollow eyes. "I think someone is watching me." Peter leaned forward. "Richard, do you think someone is trying to kill you?" Richard didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was the answer. The night before his death, Richard sat in his study and recorded a video on his phone, a video the world would only see months later. Richard, shaken. "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident. Someone wants the estate. Someone close." He swallowed. "And I know who." He never finished the sentence. A sound came from the hallway. Richard froze. The video ended. It was his last recorded moment alive. Every murder has a moment where the clock starts ticking. For Richard Adler, that moment began the minute the estate went quiet. And on the night he died, the Miraval Crown estate was quieter than it had ever been, and louder than it should have been, because hidden inside the silence was a killer. The night of the murder was unusually still. No wind, no rain, no noise from the nearby orchards. Even the fountains outside, normally humming softly, were turned off for maintenance. The estate felt like it was holding its breath. Richard, exhausted from weeks of stress, went to bed early. His phone was on silent. The security guards were conducting routine patrols. By all appearances, it was a normal night. But at 1:42 a.m., something small but critical happened. The estate's north side motion sensors stopped registering movement. Not because they malfunctioned, because someone manually disabled them. Investigators believed the killer used a narrow maintenance corridor on the east wing, a passage only 4 people knew about, a passage not marked on the public blueprint, a passage Richard used when he wanted privacy. At 1:51 a.m., the killer approached the steel maintenance hatch. They used a master key card, a 5-digit override, and a physical bypass tool to silence the lock. The entire entry took 11 seconds. 11 seconds that changed the estate forever. Once inside, the killer moved down the narrow hallway, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. This corridor opened into the ground-level service foyer, a foyer that led directly into the kitchen, the wine cellar, the staff quarters, and the back stairwell leading to Richard's private floor. The killer knew this. They had studied the layout. They had practiced the timing. They had memorized the blind spots. This was not impulsive. This was calculated. At 2:04 a.m., a security camera, one of the few the killer didn't disable, captured something chilling. A shadowy figure slipping past the kitchen doorway. No face, no identifiable clothing, just a silhouette moving quickly and silently. Marcus Hale, head of security, was off duty that night. His second-in-command was on patrol outside the East Garden. The internal monitors were left unmanned for 7 minutes. Those 7 minutes were all the killer needed. At 2:11 a.m., a soft creak echoed through Richard's hallway. We know this because the pressure-activated flooring in the corridor registered a weight that wasn't his. It took 9 seconds for Richard to wake up. He sat up in bed, listening, his breathing faint, his heart accelerating. He wasn't paranoid. He had been right all along. Someone was inside the estate. He reached for his phone. It wasn't on his nightstand. It had been moved, placed just out of reach. The killer planned this. They wanted to delay him. Richard stood up slowly and made the fatal decision to check the hallway himself. Richard opened his bedroom door a few inches. The hallway was pitch black. The only sound was the faint hum of the air vents. He stepped out, barefoot, cautious. The corridor temperature had dropped, noticeably. And then, he saw it, a figure at the far end, standing still, watching him. Not moving, not speaking, just there. Richard whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. He took a step back. The figure stepped forward. That was when Richard turned and ran. Richard sprinted toward his private study, the only room with a reinforced door and manual lock. But the killer was faster. A hand grabbed the back of his shirt. Richard twisted away. The fabric tore. His shoulder slammed into a console table, knocking over a vase that shattered against the floor. The noise echoed through the hallway like thunder, but nobody heard it. The staff quarters were on the other side of the estate. The nearest guard was patrolling the outer gardens. Richard stumbled into his study and slammed the door shut. He locked the door. He pushed a chair against the handle. He backed away, gasping for air. The killer began attempting the lock, quietly, methodically. Richard searched for a weapon, anything to defend himself. He grabbed a heavy, antique metal sculpture from his desk. The pounding on the door grew louder. Then, it stopped. Silence. Richard stood frozen, sweat dripping down his forehead. And then, crack! The killer shoulder slammed the door, shattering the frame. Richard raised the sculpture. The killer lunged. They struggled. Papers flew. Glass shattered. A lamp crashed to the floor. Richard landed a strike hard against the killer's arm. The killer grunted, a masculine sound, but we still didn't know who. Richard tried to run again. The killer grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the wall. Richard dropped the sculpture. The killer pinned him down. And with brutal force, they struck him across the temple. Richard collapsed to the ground, his breathing shallow, his vision fading. With his last ounce of strength, he whispered, "Why?" And the killer finally spoke. "You know why?" Richard tried to crawl. The killer stepped behind him, grabbed a heavy object from the shattered table, and struck him once, twice, 3 times. The third blow ended his life. Richard Adler died on the floor of his study, surrounded by shattered glass-torn documents and his final, unfinished estate letter. He was 58 years old. The killer wasn't sloppy. They weren't chaotic. They were calm. They wiped the object. They rearranged the fallen lamp to look like an accident. They pocketed the estate transfer draft from the desk. They stepped over Richard's body and walked out. At 2:29 a.m., they returned through the same maintenance corridor. They closed the hatch behind them, left no fingerprints, no DNA, no trace. The perfect exit, the perfect crime. At least, that's what they thought. The next morning, at 7:16 a.m., a maid named Lucia Romero entered the study to deliver Richard's breakfast. She froze. The tray slipped from her hands. She screamed. Security guards rushed in, and there, on the cold floor, was the body of Richard Adler. Lifeless, covered in blood, eyes still open. Marcus Hale sprinted into the room seconds later, and his reaction was immediate. "Shut down the estate. Nobody leaves, nobody enters." For the first time in decades, the gates of Miraval Crown Estate closed not to keep people out, but to trap a killer inside. When police arrive at a crime scene, they don't look at the body first. They look at the people standing around it. Because sometimes the killer doesn't run. Sometimes the killer stays, cries, pretends to be shocked. And sometimes, their family. The estate lockdown triggered chaos. Staff members huddled in the corridor. Guards shouted orders. Alarms blared softly in the background. Lucia, the maid who found the body, could barely breathe. She kept whispering, "His eyes." His eyes were still open. Marcus Hale stood rigid, staring at the body of the man he had protected for 19 years. Tears threatened but never fell. He made one phone call. To the police, priority response, possible homicide. Then a second. To Richard's children, all of them. At 7:41 a.m., the local sheriff's department arrived, followed by the regional major crimes unit. By 8:04 a.m., the study was taped off. Gloved hands, cameras flashing, evidence markers everywhere. Detective Miranda Shaw, lead investigator, stepped over the threshold and took in the scene. She had seen wealthy crime scenes before, but something about this one felt too perfect. A broken lamp, a toppled chair, a shattered vase. Everything screamed struggle, too loudly, too obviously. Miranda whispered to her partner, "Staged. Someone wanted this to look like a burglary, but burglars don't beat billionaires to death in their own private study." Her partner asked, "So what are you thinking?" Miranda didn't hesitate. This was someone who knew him. The first to arrive was Daniel. Eyes puffy, face pale, breath trembling, but Detective Shaw instantly noticed. His car was warm. He had been awake, not sleeping. Daniel. I can't believe this. Who would do something like this?" Miranda studied him. People usually cry when they lose a parent, even bad parents. Daniel wasn't crying. He was calculating. She filed that away. Next came Eliza, her steps slow, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She stared at the police tape, then at the closed door of the study, then at Marcus. Eliza. "Is he really gone?" Marcus nodded silently. Eliza exhaled, long, shaky, almost rehearsed. Miranda watched her too. Finally, Nathan arrived, late, disheveled, clearly hungover. He staggered toward the study, shouting, "Where is he? Let me see him! Let me see him!" Detectives restrained him. Nathan dropped to his knees. "Dad! Oh, God! Dad!" His sobs echoed through the hallway. Of all three reactions, Miranda believed Nathan's the most. But belief didn't mean innocence. Detective Shaw gathered the children in the main lounge. She started with Daniel. Miranda. "When did you last see your father?" Daniel. "Dinner, a few days ago." Miranda knew that. She also knew the dinner had been tense. "What was the topic of discussion?" Daniel hesitated. "The estate." Miranda raised an eyebrow. "The inheritance?" Daniel exhaled sharply. "Yes. He was being secretive. He always is." "Did that upset you?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "No. I'm used to it." But the pulse on his neck told a different story. Eliza sat straight, calm, composed, almost too composed. Miranda. "Where were you last night?" Eliza. "At home." "Anyone to verify that?" "Not really." "I live alone." Miranda smiled politely. "That's convenient." Eliza's expression did not change, but her fingers curled slightly. Nathan smelled like whiskey and grief. Miranda. "Nathan, what was your relationship with your father?" Nathan. "Complicated. He didn't think I was responsible. He wasn't wrong." Miranda blinked. Self-awareness wasn't common among suspects. "Where were you last night?" Nathan rubbed his face. "At a bar. I don't remember which one. I took an Uber home. I passed out. Checked my phone. Checked the cameras. I didn't leave. A clean alibi or a drunk one? Both could work. While interviews continued, forensics made a discovery. A crucial one. Found beneath Richard's body, partially pressed into the blood, was a thin metal shard. Not from a lamp, not from furniture, not from anything in the room. It was from a keycard casing, a specific casing used for staff access security overrides and inheritance vault access. Detective Shaw whispered, "Somebody used a keycard, and it snapped during the struggle." She looked up at the study door. Whoever entered the room didn't break in. They used authorized access. Detectives demanded access to Richard's private vault, a secured room where he stored estate documents, will drafts, and confidential records. When Marcus opened it, Detective Shaw froze. The room was torn apart, folders dumped, drawers emptied, files missing. One document was particularly absent, the newest version of Richard's estate plan. Marcus whispered, "He was planning to finalize it this week." Detective Shaw turned sharply. "Does anyone know who the new heir was supposed to be?" Marcus hesitated. I do." Miranda leaned in. "And?" Marcus swallowed. "He told me. But he didn't tell his kids." Miranda closed her eyes for a moment and then said, "Someone must have found out." Detective Shaw gathered the children again. This time she didn't hold back. "Your father's vault was searched before or during the murder. The newest estate plan is missing. One of you had motive, strong motive." Nathan's head snapped up. Daniel glared. Eliza froze. Daniel rounded on his sister. "Did you know about the new will, huh? Did he cut you out?" Eliza's voice sharpened. "Don't project your insecurities onto me. You were Dad's problem child." Nathan shot to his feet. "You're both liars." Miranda watched. They weren't grieving. They were terrified, not of losing their father, but of losing the estate. At 11:53 a.m., Marcus Hale pulled Detective Shaw aside. "Detective, I didn't want to say this in front of them." Miranda nodded. "What is it?" Marcus inhaled deeply. "Richard told me the new will disinherited one of the children." "Which one?" "Daniel." Miranda's eyes widened. "And the estate? The entire inheritance?" Marcus nodded slowly. He was giving it all to Eliza. Miranda stared at him. So Daniel had the strongest motive, but someone else had just inherited a billion-dollar empire. This changed everything. While detectives processed the interviews, a junior officer approached Detective Shaw. "Detective, we pulled footage from the backup server." Miranda frowned. "What footage?" "The footage someone tried to delete." He handed her a tablet. She pressed play. A grainy infrared image appeared. A hallway. A shadow. A figure moving quietly. Detective Shaw leaned closer. The movement was subtle. Too subtle for most people to recognize, but she saw it. The way the figure carried their weight, the posture, the gait. She whispered, "No, that can't be right." Her partner asked, "What is it?" Miranda swallowed. "That's not Daniel. That's not Nathan." Her voice went cold as stone. "That's Eliza." Miranda approached Eliza in the lounge. The elegant daughter looked up, serene and composed. Miranda sat opposite her. "Eliza, we recovered some deleted footage." Eliza blinked, slowly. "And?" Miranda leaned forward. "It shows someone entering the East Wing at 1:50 a.m. Eliza's expression remained completely calm. "Interesting." Miranda narrowed her eyes. "You know what's even more interesting?" Eliza tilted her head. "We compared the walk, the posture, the stride length." Miranda paused. "And it looks exactly like you." For the first time, Eliza's expression cracked. Just slightly, barely visible. But it was there, and Detective Shaw saw everything she needed. In every investigation, there's a point where the truth bends, where the obvious answer stops making sense, where the killer becomes a shadow, someone you thought you understood until you didn't. And for Detective Miranda Shaw, This was that moment. Detective Shaw didn't handcuff Eliza. Not yet. But she did escort her to the estate's private library, now turned into an interrogation room. 2 officers waited by the door. Eliza sat elegantly, hands folded, silence heavy. Miranda placed her tablet on the table. Miranda. This is the footage we found, deleted from the main server, but not the backup. She pressed play. The grainy figure moved down the east wing, slow, methodical, almost weightless. Eliza. And you think that's me? Miranda studied her face. Eliza, that is your walk, your posture, even your height. A long pause. Then Eliza smiled lightly. Eliza. You're right. Miranda blinked. You're admitting it? Yes. That footage does look like me. A cold, eerie calm settled over the room. But Detective... Eliza crossed her legs slowly. I've never been to the East Wing at night. Not once. I avoid it. Miranda narrowed her eyes. And why is that? Eliza leaned in. Because that's Daniel's territory. Miranda replayed the footage while Eliza watched. Then something happened, something subtle, something Eliza wanted her to see. At frame 147, as the figure passed the hallway sensor, the shadow misaligned with the footsteps, just slightly, barely, but enough. Eliza pointed. There, that's not me, that's a mask. Miranda felt her chest tighten. A mask? Eliza continued. My father's estate has motion-triggered shadow tracking. If the system doesn't perfectly align the body with the shadow, it means one of 2 things. She raised one finger. Either the person is glitching through a faulty camera, then another. Or someone is wearing a silhouette projection suit. Miranda paused. Why would someone do that? Eliza's smile faded. To look like me. Miranda excused herself and left the room, rushing straight to forensics. 2 technicians were analyzing estate inventory records discovered inside the vault. One item stood out. Prototype device. Silhouette cloaking suit. Developer, RA Innovations, Richard's private tech branch. Miranda's blood ran cold. The suit was missing, not stolen, signed out, by a single person. Name, Marcus Hale. Signed out 11:02 p.m. The night of the murder. Miranda whispered, Why would the head of security need a cloaking suit? Her partner murmured, Maybe he wasn't protecting the family. Miranda finished the thought. Maybe he was spying on them. Marcus was brought in. The normally composed, sharp-eyed security chief looked exhausted. Miranda didn't sit. She stood over him. Miranda, why did you sign out Richard's cloaking suit last night? Marcus's eyes widened only a fraction. Because Mr. Adler asked me to. Miranda froze. What did he ask you to do? Marcus sighed. He told me he suspected someone was sneaking around the estate. He didn't say who. He wanted me to wear the suit so the intruder wouldn't recognize me. Miranda took a step closer. So, you used it to patrol the house? Yes. Were you in the East Wing? Marcus shook his head. No, I patrolled the West Wing, then the North, never the East. Miranda studied him. The footage was from the East Wing. Marcus had no reason to wear the suit there. Unless he was lying. Miranda returned to the library. Eliza didn't look nervous. She looked expectant, as if waiting for Miranda to catch up. Miranda sat across from her and spoke carefully. Eliza, the footage might be fake, but someone wanted us to think you were there. Eliza nodded softly. That's the point. What do you mean? Eliza didn't hesitate. Someone in this house wants me to look guilty. Miranda kept her voice level. Who? Eliza blinked once. Slowly. My father. Miranda drew back slightly. Richard? Eliza nodded. Yes. He wanted me to look guilty. Before he died. Eliza leaned forward. My father had a project. Something he kept hidden from Daniel and Nathan. Only I knew about it. Miranda raised an eyebrow. What project? A psychological inheritance test. Miranda frowned. Eliza continued. He told me 3 weeks ago that he was planning an evaluation. Something dramatic. He said that if one of his children could pass the test, they would inherit everything. Miranda shook her head. That sounds extreme. Eliza nodded. He wasn't well, Detective. He was paranoid. He believed someone in our family wanted him dead. Miranda leaned back. And you believed him? Eliza looked away. I didn't know what to believe anymore. An officer entered suddenly, holding a clear evidence bag. Detective Shaw? We found the victim's phone. Miranda snapped her head around. Where? In the fireplace. Miranda's eyes widened. Burned? Not fully. The outer case melted, but the motherboard survived. Miranda's heart thudded. Run data recovery immediately. The officer nodded and left. Eliza's voice cut through the silence. Detective. Miranda turned. Eliza's face had gone pale. If my father destroyed his phone before he died, it wasn't because he feared a killer. Her voice trembled. It's because of the recordings. Miranda's blood ran cold. What recordings? Eliza swallowed. He recorded everything, every argument, every confession, every private conversation. Miranda leaned forward. Recordings of who? Eliza whispered. Of us, his children, Marcus, the house staff. Eliza's eyes filled with dread. And if he destroyed that phone, then he knew the killer was coming. Miranda left the library, pacing the hallway. Bits of truth collided in her mind. Someone used a cloaking suit to impersonate Eliza. Someone deleted footage. Someone broke into the vault. Someone knew Richard kept recordings. Richard destroyed his own phone, and someone wanted the blame to fall on Eliza. But one detail screamed louder than the rest. Marcus Hale signed out the cloaking suit, and Marcus Hale knew the security system better than anyone. Yet something didn't fit. Marcus was loyal, dedicated. He had protected Richard for 19 years. So why would he suddenly betray him? Unless he didn't. Miranda stopped walking. Her eyes widened. The suit was signed out by Marcus. But who had access to Marcus's keycard? Who knew his codes, his routines? His clearance level? Her pulse began to race. Daniel. Daniel, who had a motive. Daniel, who was cut from the will. Daniel, who was awake early. Daniel, whose car was warm. And Daniel, who had grown up with the entire estate's security layout memorized. Miranda whispered, He used Marcus's credentials. Miranda returned to the library again. This time, she didn't sit. Eliza, I'm going to ask you something serious. Eliza nodded. Of course. Did your father ever tell Daniel he was being removed from the will? Eliza inhaled sharply. He didn't have to. Daniel suspected it. He was furious. He confronted my father at dinner the night before the murder. Miranda froze. That wasn't in Daniel's statement. Eliza shook her head. He lied. Miranda exhaled slowly. Everything was falling into place, almost too perfectly. She turned to leave, but Eliza spoke one last time. Detective? Miranda looked back. Eliza's voice was soft, careful. If you think Daniel killed him, you're wrong. Miranda frowned. Why? Eliza stared straight into her eyes. Because Daniel is not the one my father feared. Miranda's skin prickled. Then who did he fear? Eliza whispered. Me. Every murder leaves echoes. Some in the walls, some in the memories of those left behind, and some in the voices of the dead. This was the part of the case Detective Miranda Shaw feared the most, because tonight, Richard Morrison would finally speak. The forensic lab was silent except for the soft ticking of cooling metal. Richard's half-burned phone lay under the recovery scanner. Wires, micro-soldering needles, a monitor flashing, data retrieval, 73% recovered, audio fragments recovered, voice memos recovered, private videos. Miranda leaned over the technician. How much can you restore? The tech swallowed. A lot more than we expected. The internal board survived the fire. Looks like he smashed it before burning it, but that didn't destroy the data. Miranda frowned. Why smash it first? The tech hesitated. Someone paranoid, someone afraid the phone would fall into the wrong hands. Miranda's stomach tightened. Can you play the first file? The tech nodded. A moment later, Richard's voice crackled through the speakers. If you're hearing this, it means I was right. Miranda froze. The room fell silent. Richard continued. Someone in this house wants me dead. Richard's voice was shaky, frantic. Not the calm, calculated billionaire the world knew. They've been watching me, moving things, standing outside my study at night, listening to my calls. A pause, a heavy breath. I don't know who it is, but I know who they want you to think it is. Miranda's pulse quickened. Richard added, if anything happens to me, start with Eliza. Miranda's breath caught. The tech looked up, startled. Wait, he wanted you to suspect Eliza? Miranda shook her head. No, that's not what he meant. She replayed the last line in her head. Start with Eliza, not Eliza did it. Not Eliza is guilty. Start, meaning Eliza knows something. Eliza sat exactly where Miranda left her. Still, almost too still. Miranda entered with a presence of authority. Eliza, your father left recordings. Eliza didn't react. Not a blink. Miranda continued. He said someone in the house wanted him dead. Eliza finally inhaled quietly. And he told you to start with me. Eliza closed her eyes. Of course he did. Miranda stepped closer. Eliza, what did he mean? Eliza lifted her head, eyes glistening with a mix of exhaustion and anger. My father trusted me with things he didn't trust anyone else with. That's why he said to start with me. Start what? Eliza stared at her long and hard. The truth. Eliza reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a small, old-fashioned key. Miranda instinctively stepped back. What is that? Eliza held it delicately. The key to my father's hidden room. Miranda froze. He told you about a hidden room? Eliza nodded. He built it 27 years ago, before he married my mother, before Daniel or Nathan were even born. Miranda's voice lowered. What's inside? Eliza swallowed. Everything. Eliza led Miranda through the east wing, down the long corridor, past the old oil portraits, toward the room at the end, the one the footage showed the fake Eliza entering. Eliza stopped at a blank wall panel. No door? Miranda asked. Eliza smiled faintly. That's the point. She pulled out the key, inserted it into what looked like an antique wall screw, and the entire wall panel clicked, then rotated. Miranda stepped back, stunned. The hidden room opened like a vault. Cold air drifted out, stale, undisturbed for years. Miranda whispered, What is this place? Eliza answered, My father's real mind. Miranda stepped into the darkness. Eliza didn't follow. She remained at the doorway, as if she couldn't bring herself to enter. Miranda looked around. The room was small, just a few steps across, but every inch was filled with metal lockboxes, old cassette tapes, USB drives, handwritten notes, a wall filled with photographs, floor-to-ceiling binders labeled by years of secrets. Miranda stared, stunned. Eliza, your father documented everyone. Eliza's voice echoed from the doorway. Yes, that was his sickness. Miranda approached the center table. A leather journal lay open. The last written page read, I feel eyes on me. I feel betrayal from blood. And worst of all, I feel the truth tightening around me. Miranda whispered, "This man knew he was being hunted." Miranda examined the wall of photos. Daniel, Nathan, Marcus, the chef, the groundskeepers, daily routines, schedules, unmarked timestamps. Then Miranda froze. Her gaze locked onto a single photo, Richard, arguing with a woman Miranda had never seen before. A date was written beneath it. 2 days before the murder, Miranda turned sharply to Eliza. "Who is this?" Eliza stepped in carefully, eyes narrowing. "That's my mother." Miranda stiffened. "Eliza, your mother died when you were 12. Eliza nodded. "Yes, she did." Miranda pointed at the photo. "So who is that?" Eliza's silence was suffocating. She whispered, "That woman isn't my mother. My father lied." Miranda felt her pulse spike. "Eliza, who is she?" Eliza answered, "I don't know," then added quietly, "But she wasn't supposed to exist." Miranda moved to the metal lockboxes, each labeled in Richard's handwriting. One stood out. "Eliza, Drawer 4. Miranda looked at Eliza. "Eliza, do you know what's inside?" Eliza shook her head. "No, he never let me open anything with my name." Miranda hesitated, then unlocked the box. Inside were 2 letters, a cassette tape, a DNA report, a photograph of Eliza as a baby, and a birth certificate, with a name blacked out in thick ink. Miranda felt her chest tighten. "Eliza," she swallowed, "this birth certificate, the mother's name has been removed." Eliza's face drained of color. Miranda opened the DNA report and froze. "Eliza, this says you're not biologically related to your brothers." Eliza didn't move. She didn't blink. She whispered, "I know." The technician's voice echoed from the hallway. "Detective Shaw, another recording recovered." Miranda turned sharply. "Play it." Richard's voice filled the secret room, this time calmer, heavier, almost mourning something. "Eliza, if you ever find this, I'm sorry." Eliza covered her mouth. "I'm sorry for dragging you into a family that wasn't yours, for hiding where you came from, for lying to protect you." Miranda leaned closer to the speaker. Richard continued, "Your mother didn't die. She left. And she has every reason to come back." Eliza staggered. "Detective, he's lying, right?" Miranda didn't answer. She couldn't. The recording finished with one final line. "If anyone kills me, she will be the reason." Miranda stepped away from the table. Her mind raced. Daniel, Nathan, Marcus, the estate staff. Everyone had seemed like a suspect, but Richard's words, "Your mother has every reason to come back. If anyone kills me, she will be the reason." Miranda whispered, "The killer may not be in the house at all." Eliza was trembling. "My father lied about everything, about her, about me, about our family. But Detective—" She swallowed hard. "He always told the truth when he was afraid." Miranda stared at her. "Eliza, your mother didn't disappear?" Eliza looked up slowly, tears in her eyes. Miranda finished. She was hidden. Some secrets die with their owners. Others claw their way back, refusing to stay buried. And sometimes, the thing you fear most isn't a killer, but the truth itself. Detective Miranda Shaw had seen dozens of wealthy families implode, but nothing like what she was about to uncover. The forensic tech jogged down the hallway toward Miranda. "Detective, the phone finished the extraction. We found something." Miranda followed him to the lab. A new file blinked on the screen. Video 0427.mp4. Timestamp 11:18 p.m. Night of the murder. The same night the cloaked figure appeared. The same night Richard died. Miranda hit play. The video opened on the dimly lit hallway outside Richard's study. Richard's voice whispered urgently, "Stop following me. I told you, this family is not yours." A woman's voice responded, sharp, low. Familiar yet unknown. "You made them mine when you stole from me." Miranda froze. Richard stepped backward into frame, disheveled, frightened. Richard. "I protected her. You would have ruined her life." Woman. "You ruined mine first." The tech stared at the screen. "Detective, that voice isn't Eliza." Miranda nodded slowly. She recognized it. It was the same voice from the photo in the secret room. The same mysterious woman Richard argued with. The woman who wasn't supposed to exist. The woman Richard hid from his children. Miranda whispered, "Eliza's real mother." Miranda returned to the secret room. She scanned the wall, the binders, the notes, until she found a folder labeled E, Mother, Prior Contact. Inside was a single sheet. Miranda's fingers trembled as she read the name. Marissa Hale. Miranda's eyes widened. Hale? As in Marcus Hale, the head of security. Miranda suddenly felt cold. Eliza had said she didn't know her mother. Marcus said he'd served the family since before Eliza was born. Richard said someone had been listening outside his study. And now, Miranda had a name, a face, and a truth that made her heart pound. Eliza's mother was Marcus Hale's sister, which meant Marcus wasn't just protecting the family. Marcus was protecting blood. Miranda walked back to the library. Eliza looked up as she entered, eyes red, but locked with determination. Miranda sat across from her. "Eliza, I need you to breathe. What I'm about to tell you is not easy." Eliza inhaled shakily. "Go on." Miranda placed the document on the table. "This is your mother's name." Eliza stared down, froze. "Marissa Hale." Miranda nodded softly. "Eliza, your mother is alive." Eliza's hands began to shake. She covered her mouth. Miranda continued. "She was in the estate 2 days before your father died." Eliza blinked hard. No, that's impossible. My father said she was dangerous, unstable. He said..." Miranda leaned forward. "Eliza, he lied." Eliza's breath hitched. Miranda placed a second truth onto the table like a dagger. "And your mother is Marcus Hale's sister." Eliza recoiled as if struck. Marcus knew. All this time?" Miranda nodded. "Yes," Eliza whispered. "Why would he hide her from me?" Miranda answered quietly. "Because your mother didn't disappear on her own. She was pushed away." Miranda returned to the lockbox labeled Eliza, Year 04. Inside were the 2 letters, both torn, unsent, both from Marissa. Miranda handed them to Eliza. Eliza read slowly. "Richard, please let me see her. She's my child. You can't erase me just because you have money." Eliza's fingers tightened. She read the second. "I will come back for her. I will not let you raise her to hate me." Eliza's voice cracked. "My father tore these up." Miranda nodded, and then burned the phone that held their recordings. Eliza wiped her tears, eyes sharpening. "Detective, do you think she killed him?" Miranda didn't answer, not yet. Miranda stepped into the hallway, just as Daniel stormed toward her, face thunderous. "Detective, I heard you were in the East Wing. What the hell is going on?" Miranda kept her voice calm. "Daniel, we found evidence your father had a hidden room." Daniel stopped cold. "A what?" "A secret room where he documented family behavior, yours included." Daniel's eyes flickered, fear, then anger. Miranda stepped closer. "Your father was afraid someone would hurt him." Daniel scoffed. "Hurt him? He hurt us. You think he was some saint? That man destroyed everything he touched." Miranda's tone sharpened. "And did he destroy something of yours, Daniel? Maybe an inheritance?" Daniel clenched his jaw. "You think I killed him?" Miranda didn't speak. Daniel sneered. "You're wasting your time looking at me. You want a real suspect? Look at Eliza's mother." Miranda's heart skipped. You know about her? Daniel laughed bitterly. Oh, I know she's been around. She's been calling the estate for months. Marcus tried to hide it. But I heard the recordings. Miranda stiffened. You what? Daniel smirked. Yeah, Marcus wasn't as careful as he thought. Miranda narrowed her eyes. Daniel, what recording? Daniel shrugged. Ask Marcus. Marcus Hale stood outside the estate doors when Miranda approached. He straightened immediately. Detective, we need to talk. Marcus's eyes flickered with unease. Miranda didn't waste time. Where is your sister? Marcus froze. Detective, please, you don't know what you're asking. Miranda stepped forward. I know she was here. I know she confronted Richard. And I know she has something to do with his fear. Marcus's breath hitched. Eliza cannot know. She already knows. Marcus closed his eyes, as if a lifetime of secrets had just collapsed. Detective, I tried to protect them. Who? The family? No. Marcus swallowed. My sister. Miranda's pulse quickened. Marcus, where is she now? He finally looked up, eyes devastated. She came back, Detective. She came back that night. Miranda felt the world tilt. Marcus whispered, she came for Richard. The forensic tech ran into the hall again, panting. Detective, you need to see this right now. Miranda followed him to the screen. A new thumbnail flickered. Video 0428 MP4 timestamp, 11:41 p.m. Minutes before Richard died, Miranda hit play. The camera angle was low, as if Richard placed his phone on the floor in a rush. Marissa Hale stood over him, eyes cold, expression unreadable. Richard backed into his desk. Richard, you'll ruin everything. She'll never forgive you. Marissa stepped closer. Marissa, you ruined her long before I could. Richard shook. You can't take her. Marissa's voice cracked with fury. She was mine first. She reached toward him. Richard grabbed something from his desk. A paperweight. A struggle began. The camera jolted sideways. A gasp. A thud. And then the video cut out. Miranda's heart hammered. The tech whispered, Detective, was that the murder? Miranda replayed the last frames in her mind. No, there was no blood, no final blow, no collapse. He was alive. She leaned forward. This wasn't the murder. She pointed at the timestamp. He died at 12:03 a.m. This was at 11:41. The tech nodded. So someone else came after her? Miranda swallowed hard. Yes. Miranda turned to leave, but something caught her eye. The edge of the video frame, a shadow entering the doorway. A broad build, tall, confident, purposeful, not Marissa, not Marcus. Miranda whispered, that silhouette, I've seen it. She replayed the video, zoomed in. The shadow stepped into the hall, and then the faint reflection from the polished floor revealed Daniel. Miranda felt adrenaline surge through her. She whispered, Daniel wasn't asleep. He wasn't in his room. He was right outside Richard's study. The tech stared in shock. Detective, are you saying Daniel walked in after the fight? Miranda exhaled slowly. Yes, and whatever happened after that isn't on camera. Miranda returned to the library. Eliza stood when she entered, her face hopeful. Did you find something? Miranda swallowed. Eliza, someone else entered the study after your mother left. Eliza's expression hardened. Who? Miranda answered. Daniel. Eliza stepped back in disbelief. Daniel? But he hated my father, yes, but... Miranda shook her head. Eliza, hatred is a motive. Eliza was shaking. No, Detective. Daniel wouldn't kill him. He wouldn't kill the only man who ever... She stopped, realizing something. Detective, Daniel knew. Miranda frowned. Knew what? Eliza whispered. That I wasn't really his sister. In every true crime story, there is always one person who thinks they're the smartest in the room. And for weeks, that person was Marcus Hale, head of security, trusted by the billionaire, the man who claimed loyalty while hiding the sharpest knife. Tonight, the mask begins to slip. 2 days after Richard's funeral, Marcus Hale did something that immediately raised eyebrows. He walked back into Miraval Crown Estate, alone, late at night, with no appointment. The staff assumed he was collecting personal belongings, but the cameras revealed something else. Marcus didn't walk to his office. He didn't go to the security wing. He went straight to Richard's private study, the very room where the murder happened. He walked inside, closed the door behind him, and began searching. He opened drawers, pulled files, checked behind furniture, lifted carpet edges, pressed on wall panels. He wasn't grieving. He was looking for something missing, something he was afraid would resurface. At 11:47 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. He froze when he saw the caller ID. It read, Richard Adler. His hands shook. He answered. A soft male voice said, "Marcus, why?" Marcus panic laughed. "This isn't funny. Who is this?" The voice repeated, "Why did you do it, Marcus?" Marcus hung up instantly. But before he could breathe, the phone rang again. Same caller ID. He answered with a trembling whisper. "Stop it." This time, there was only silence and breathing. Deep, slow, measured. Marcus threw the phone across the room. He stormed out. But what he didn't know was this. The call was traced, not by police, not by hackers, by Emily, Richard's daughter, and she had done it for a reason. Emily, cold and meticulous, suspected Marcus from day one. Too many inconsistencies. Wrong timeline, wrong guard rotations, wrong statements about cameras, wrong story about when he last saw her father. And now, the phone call proved it. She knew Marcus returned to the study to find something. She knew he thought he'd hidden every piece of evidence. So she set a trap. Earlier that evening, she placed a single object in the study, Richard's old pocket recorder, half hidden under the bookshelf, exactly where Marcus would search. And if Marcus found it, he'd panic. A guilty man always panics. Back inside the study, Marcus returned for his dropped phone. As he crouched down, his eyes caught something, a glint of metal. He reached under the lower bookshelf, and his fingers touched the recorder. His heartbeat exploded. He grabbed it, instantly pressing play. A voice filled the room, Richard's voice, calm, narrating a note he had recorded 2 weeks before his death. Marcus dropped the device. Richard's recorded message continued. "If anything happens to me, it will be someone within my own estate." Marcus's breathing became sharp, panicked. Richard added, "And it will be someone who knows the security codes." Marcus muttered, "No, no, no." His face twisted into fear. The recorder ended. Marcus smashed it against the wall. Too late. Because Emily, watching from the estate's monitoring room, had caught the entire moment on camera. The final confirmation she needed. Now that Emily had proof he panicked, she confronted Marcus indirectly. She called him from a private number. When he answered, she spoke calmly. "You didn't find it, did you?" Marcus didn't respond. Emily continued, "You found the recorder, but not the file." Marcus whispered, "What file?" Emily, "The one my father hid. The one you came here tonight to destroy." Marcus lost control. "Where is it?" Emily, "It's already in the hands of the police." A lie. But Marcus didn't know that. And then she ended with, "Good night, Marcus." Here's the truth. Emily didn't have the file. The police didn't have the file. No one had it. Until now. Because as Marcus tore apart the study earlier, he made a mistake. He pulled the wrong wall panel. Behind that panel was a hidden cavity. Inside it, buried in dust, was a USB drive, small, black, and labeled in Richard's handwriting, MH Confidential. The MH stood for Marcus Hale. This was the real file Marcus came searching for. But he didn't find it. A housekeeper named Darcy did. She turned it over to Emily immediately. Emily plugged the drive into her laptop. There was only one video file. Timestamp 8 days before Richard's murder. The footage showed Richard sitting in his study, glaring directly into the camera. And then he said, "I know what Marcus is planning. I know he's been meeting with the people threatening my estate. I know he intends to force a transfer. And I know he's capable of violence." Emily covered her mouth. Richard continued, "If anything happens to me, Marcus Hale is the first person to investigate." Emily didn't breathe for nearly 10 seconds. This was the smoking gun, the motive, the prediction, the name, everything. Marcus, overwhelmed and desperate, sped out of the estate in his car, only to discover Emily wasn't bluffing, because at the gates he was met with 2 police vehicles, a forensic officer, and Emily herself standing there, expression cold, unblinking. Marcus stepped out of the car. Emily said one sentence. "Dad recorded everything." Marcus paled. He tried to deny it. But then the officer stepped forward and said, "Marcus Hale, you're under arrest for the murder of Richard Adler." Marcus snapped. He yelled, "You have no proof. You don't know what he did. You don't know anything." Emily whispered, "I know enough." Marcus was handcuffed, pinned against the hood of a patrol car. For the first time, he looked small, defeated, caught, but the case wasn't over. Because as Marcus was placed in the back of the police car, he smiled, a slow, chilling smile, and said, "You think I'm the only one?" Emily froze, because that sentence meant there was another conspirator, another insider, another secret, another danger. Marcus Hale was not acting alone.